Hi, Diamond and Rough. I am the law. Now, I want to talk about Dr. Ford's testimony. Now, it's hard for me to believe, I believe part of her story, but there's so many details that I think she's missing that it's hard for me to believe her whole story because the pledge says you would tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And she, in my opinion, has not told the whole truth. She's missing details. Um, it could come from the concept of projection. In other words, you want this person to be this other person, but it's not that person because you're mad at the second person. Okay, if her testimony, in my opinion, is not complete, it's just missing a lot of critical details. For example, there are too many blanks. What I mean by projection is that the attacker is A, but she wants it to be B, which is Brett. So in her mind, she's going to say, "Well, I'm mad at Brett anyway." So the attacker is Brett, and it could have been somebody else. Projection. You're trying to make someone else who is not that someone else, if that makes sense. And I don't know if that's a psychological term, but okay. Now I don't doubt that something did happen. Okay. The If we go by this premise, is that she's 15, he's 17. She had a crush on him. He wasn't interested. He's a jock, and he wasn't interested. Okay, and he spurned her. So now she's really mad at him. She's mad at him, but she's gonna make a last ditch effort to get with him. Okay, and he's just not interested in her. But she's mad at him anyway because he wasn't interested in her. So she goes to the party. She claims she does not know or remember who carried her, who drove her to the party. Now, you don't get in a car with somebody and you don't know who's driving. You don't know how many other children kids or teenagers are in the car. I have a hard time believing that. He or she drives her to a house. She doesn't know what street she was on. She doesn't know if she went across a bridge, if the house was down the street from Taco Bell. She doesn't know any of those details. Okay, she claims she doesn't remember, which I have a hard time believing that. If you get in a car with somebody, you're going to remember. You should remember who you get in the car with and what direction you went. Did you go past a mountain? Did you go past a hill? So I have a hard time believing that she doesn't remember. Okay, either that or she's covering up for that person to make her story more credible. Okay, so she gets to the house. She claims she doesn't remember the house. I find that hard to believe. Okay, she doesn't remember if the house was on a hill, if it had a paved driveway, if it was brick, it was mostly brick. If it was brick and wood, did it have steeples? Uh, was it across the street from Madison Avenue? She doesn't give any of those details. Okay, so something happens at the party. She's had one beer, so in her mind it was Brett, and it may not have been Brett. But she wants it to be Brett because she's mad at him anyway. It could have been a whole nother person. But she wants it to be Brett because she's mad at him. Okay? And I have a hard time believing that she doesn't notice any distinguishing characteristics about the house other than the fact that it had a narrow staircase. You know, that she didn't mention, was it over a bridge, on a hill, were there steeples? Nothing. So she runs out of the house. She gets in a car who that person drives her home. Again, she says, I don't know. She doesn't know who drove her home. I have a hard time believing that. She didn't have any money, so she didn't take a cab. How is it that you come from a traumatic experience and you don't know whose car you're getting into? I have a hard time believing that. She didn't have any money, so she didn't catch a cab. Did she walk home part of the way home? Okay, she's just not giving enough details. Or either that, she's covering up for someone. Okay, so now when I was 11, I can remember distinguishing characteristics about a house we went into. I can remember the cars we got into. I mean, as far back as 10, I can remember. And you know what? When you go through a traumatic incident, your mind starts to record things. Your mind starts to say, okay, red shirt, Medicine Avenue, Medicine Street, uh, Lynn Drive. Well, it was a Rambler, a yellow Rambler. That's what it was. Your mind starts, when you go through traumatic stuff, your mind starts to record things. I tend to look at the clock. My mind, if something traumatic happens to me, I tend to look at the clock first because I want to know what time this thing happened. Okay, so she got home. She has her key to the house, evidently. So she get home and she didn't call the police, tell her parents, write anything down. Um, Critical details. And so that's why it's hard for me to believe her story in totality because she's missing critical details. What street she drove to, what street was it on a hill? Critical details about the house. It had steeples, brick, 100% brick, partially brick. Um, was the carpet yellow? It's hard for me to believe that she's missing those critical details and she doesn't even know where she's at. Okay, so I'm supposed to believe that Bullwinkle drove her to the party and Cinderella drove her back. Okay, so I don't believe that either. And the party, I'm supposed to believe that the house uh, was just Disney World. Okay, she's missing a lot of critical details. So that's why her story is hard for me to believe. Um, but it could be projection. She wants it to be Brett Kavanaugh, but maybe it wasn't. But you know what? Either way, we will know the truth or somewhere we will get somewhat close to the truth in the next few days. It would be a very sad and dramatic ending if we found out that both of them were lying. Bad situation, y'all.